The state ready to call its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Who will that be?
The state will call Melanie Gibb. The testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing.
All right, before we commence with testimony, Ms. Gibb, please make sure to answer all of the questions verbally so we make a good record. Try to avoid talking at the same time as any attorney questioning you. And I am going to inquire now that you're under oath. Have you reviewed or watched any of this trial since it started on the court's live stream?
No.
Have you talked to anyone else about testimony they gave in this trial so far? All right, with that in mind, then, Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Melanie Gibb, Melanie Gibb.
Miss Gibb, do you know an individual named Chad Daybell?
I do.
Do you recall approximately when you met him?
I believe it was the summer of 2017.
Do you recall where you met him?
I met him at a get together that was like a camping environment.
Did you talk to him at that event?
I did.
Did you stay in close contact with him after that?
No,
Do you recall meeting an individual named Lori Vallow?
yes.
How did you meet her?
I met her in a church building where I was given a class and she was in the audience.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been?
I believe October 2018.
And do you recall when you met her, who approached whom?
She approached me.
When you first met her, did you end up striking up a friendship?
Yes,
And did you stay in pretty consistent contact with her, at least initially after meeting her?
yes,
Do you recall going to an event with Miss Vallow towards the end of October of 2018?
yes.
Do you recall when that was?
It was in October. I would say about a few weeks after I met Lori. And yes, we went to St. George, Utah.
Do you recall why you went to St. George, Utah?
We went for a conference.
Did anyone else travel with you and Lori to that conference?
Yes.
And do you recall who?
I can't remember their names. I think there was 6 of us, 5 or 6 of us.
Did you all travel together in the same vehicle?
Yes.
When you got there to the conference, do you recall if Mr. Daybell was there?
Yes.
What was he doing there, if you know?
He was selling his books and giving a talk.
Did you approach him at any point?
Yeah, we talked.
Were you present when, or let me back up. Did you observe Mr. Daybell and Miss Vallow together?
Yes.
Do you know if that was the first time they had met?
Yes, it was.
Were you part of introducing them?
I was, we walked into the building together and I can't remember if I introduced her or if she introduced herself. I can't recall.
And when you say we walked into the building, is that referring to you and Lori?
Me and Lori and several other women.
And Mr. Daybell or Chad Daybell was already present?
Correct.
Throughout the conference, did you see Mr. Daybell again?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lori and Chad together?
I did.
What observations, if any, did you make?
They communicated a lot and they were very interested in communicating about the things that they were learning and talking about. Seemed to be friendly.
And when you say they were communicating a lot, did you see them engaged in conversation together?
I did.
Did it appear to be deep conversation?
Yes.
Did they appear to be focused on each other?
Yes.
Was there anything else about it that caught your attention?
They seemed to be attracted to each other. That caught my attention.
And at the time that you're there in October, do you know if Lori Vallow was married?
Yes, she was.
Had you ever met her husband at that point?
I had
And who was her husband?
Charles Fallow.
Do you know if Chad Daybell was married at that point?
Yes, I do. And he was
And do you know who his wife was?
Tammy Daybell.
Had you ever met Tammy?
No,
After that conference, did you travel back to Arizona with Lori?
I did.
Do you recall sometime after the conference talking to her about what she and Chad discussed?
Yes.
What were some of the things she shared with you?
He shared with her, according to what she shared with me, that
Your Honor, if I may respond.
Grounds to the objection? Ms. Blake, you may respond.
Your Honor, it's a statement of a party opponent as well as a charged co-conspirator.
All right, the court does find that's an exception to the hearsay rule that applies here, so the witness can answer the question. Objections overruled.
And do you recall the question?
yes, she said that they talked about multiple lives, and I believe she talked about, how many lives that she had lived on this earth, and that she indeed was married to someone named Moroni in a previous life. Those kind of conversations. Yeah.
And prior to meeting Chad Daybell, did Lori tell you did Lori ever talk about multiple probations before that or multiple lives?
She did.
So she had some interest in that subject matter already.
Yes.
But when you talked to her about her conversation with Chad at that conference, she told you Chad gave her some additional information.
That's right.
Did she say anything regarding what Chad had told her about she and Chad?
That they had been married in previous probations.
Did Lori seem receptive of that information?
She did.
And we talked about you'd met Charles before, correct? Had you ever met Lori's children?
Yes,
And specifically, did you ever meet Tylee Ryan?
I did.
Did you ever meet JJ Vallow?
I did.
Do you recall where you met them?
In Lori's house.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lori with her children?
I did.
What observations, if any, did you make about her and Tylee?
They had a difficult relationship. They didn't necessarily get along very well.
And what about Lori and JJ?
I could tell she had a lot of affection for him, but he was autistic and he seemed to be very busy for her.
We talked a little bit about you met Lori in October of 2018. And initially, how often did you two have contact?
In the beginning, it was almost daily, with the exception probably of a day or two a week. And that was probably for maybe about a month or two.
Do you recall approximately when the contact wasn't as frequent or what was going on at that time?
Yes, it was after January when she started to move around. She moved multiple times, so I couldn't keep in contact with her.
And that would be January of 2019.
Correct.
And to be clear, she wasn't moving around to avoid contact with you,
Right.
but just as she moved around,
Right.
you'd lose track of her.
Well, we wouldn't see each other. Yeah.
Did you still talk to her on the phone?
Yes.
And after that first conference in October, do you recall the next time that you saw Chad Daybell?
The next month, November 2018, he came down for a conference in Arizona.
When he came down to Arizona, did his wife come with him?
No,
And at that conference in October, did you ever see his wife Tammy there?
no,
When he came down, so he came down to a conference in November in Arizona.
that's right.
Was Lori present for that conference?
Yes.
Outside of the conference, did you see him at any other gathering?
Yes, at her house.
And when you say her house, is that Lori?
That's right.
Was her house in Arizona at the time?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the gathering?
So the one at her house was a small group of people met before the conference. And so there was, I don't know, maybe 20 people there. And so Lori and her friends were there.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lori and Chad together at that meeting or the gathering at her house?
Yes.
What observations did you make?
They talked often with each other. They seemed to be very interested in each other.
Did Lori at any time tell you anything about she and Chad when he was down there in Arizona?
Yes, she told me that they had been married before in previous probations.
Is that when she first shared that information with you?
I believe she shared it with me in St. George. So it's between St. George and November, she shared it.
Did she talk about going to the temple with Chad?
She did.
What did she tell you about that?
She told me that they were going to be resealed again like they had been in previous lives together.
And did she tell you that they in fact had gone to the temple?
Yes,
And that was in November, about a month after meeting each other.
that's right.
And she told you the purpose of that was so they could be sealed together again.
That's right.
At that time, was Charles still alive?
Yes,
And was Tammy still alive?
yes.
Was Charles present at the gathering at her house?
No,
Do you know where he was or did you learn where he was?
he was out of town.
Do you know what Chad did for a living?
He was a sexton and he wrote books.
With regard to his books, had you ever read any of his books?
Yes,
Do you know if Lori had read any of his books?
yes,
Did she seem interested in his books?
yes.
When Chad was there in November, do you know where he stayed?
He stayed at Lori's house.
And Charles was not there.
Correct.
Did anyone else stay at her house, if you know?
Yes, there were multiple people there.
Were there any other men there?
Mm, I don't know if her brother was there, but nobody else that I know of.
And when you say her brother, do you know which brother you're referring to?
Alex,
Did you ever meet any of Lori's other brothers or her other brother?
I don't think so.
Did Lori ever talk to you about her conversations with Chad?
Yes,
Do you know, did Lori ever share with you if she turned to Chad for advice?
she did.
And we talked a little bit about the multiple lives or multiple probations already, correct?
Yes,
At some point, did Chad or Lori share more information about that with you?
yes.
And which one of them?
They both did.
Do you know which one of them seemed to have the most understanding regarding multiple probations?
Yes, Lori would often call Chad and Chad would give her the information and then she would come back and share it with me and her other friends.
And when she would share the information, would she tell you she got that from Chad?
Yeah,
At some point, did Chad or Lori talk to you about the concept of light and dark?
yes.
Do you recall who talked to you about that?
Lori shared it with me.
Did she tell you where she got that information from?
She got it from Chad.
What did she share with you about the concept of light and dark?
So if someone was light, they had made contracts with Jesus Christ before they came here. And if they were dark, they had made contracts and promises with Satan. And it was a different scale level of how dark or light they were.
So it was a decision before they came here to Earth. of a
Yes,
Contract.
initially, yes.
And then with regard to the multiple probations, as you learned more about that, what did Lori share with you regarding multiple probations?
That people lived multiple times. And then she would find out, she would try to find out like when that was.
And was there some kind of a rating system or a system to easily identify if someone was light or dark or what level they were?
She would ask him and he would somehow find out. And he would find out, how many times they've been on this planet or any other planets, I guess. And he would just find that out by asking questions the way he did. And then she would share it with us.
And the he you're referring to, is that Chad?
Yes,
At some point, were people designated with a number and then either an L or a D?
correct.
Where would those designations originate?
From Chad.
And if someone was designated a D, did that stand for dark?
Correct.
And the L was for light?
Correct.
At some point, did Lori also share with you that she believed she had a mission here on Earth?
Yes.
What did she share with you she believed her mission to be?
She felt that it was her mission to gather women to the 144,000, and that she would be the leader of it. At some point, she thought she was going to lead that.
And when we talk about the 144,000, what's that in reference to? Could you explain a little bit?
Yes, it's a biblical explanation for a certain group, a certain amount of people that would go out and gather Israel in the last days and have the power and authority to do that.
So gathering people in the end times.
Correct.
Do you know where Lori got the idea or the belief that she was meant to be one of the leaders or help gather?
I think she got it from herself.
Do you know if did she ever tell you if she talked to Chad about that?
She did.
What did she tell you in relation to that, if you recall?
Well, she shared with him what she believed she was, which was the gatherer of that. And then he agreed that she was. And so he, told her that that's what her mission was.
Do you know if Lori was telling other people about light and dark and multiple probations as well?
She was.
Do you know some of the other individuals she shared that with?
Yes. Sulema, Serena, Nicole, and Christina, and Melanie, and just maybe a few other people that are not as significant.